Shabbat Shalom. By a show of hands, how many people have a mezuzah on their doorpost at home? All right, pretty good. By a show of hands, how many of you kiss the mezuzah in or out? A couple. Occasion. All right, I heard occasionally, right? When we really need it. How many of us walk by our mezuzah, or for many of us, mezuzot, if we have them throughout the house, and don't even pay attention to them anymore? We put them up once, and then we just walk on by. It was meant to be rhetorical, but thank you, those of you who volunteered. Right? That's so often what we do. We just put them up, and then we walk on by, and we never think about those mezuzot again. But the commandment of mezuzah, of affixing something to the doorpost, actually has its roots in our Torah portion this morning, Parashat Bo. And there's a wonderful story, a fascinating story, a strange story that we all know pretty well, that's wedged in between the 9th and 10th plagues. Now, because of that wonderful movie, The Ten Commandments, we have some visions in our head of what this looks like. But of course, we know that the 10th plague was Makot Bechora, right? The death of the firstborn. And we know that the 9th plague was darkness, Choshech, right? You remember from dipping? Right? The 9th plague is Choshech, the 10th plague is the death of the firstborn. And in between those, we have a break. The narrative gives us a break as God no longer speaks to everybody in sending those plagues against the Egyptians, but God speaks directly to the Jewish people. And of course, we know this is the story of the lamb's blood being painted on the doorposts. Why? So that the angel of death could pass over the houses. And of course, that's how we know that the holiday's name is Passover, because the angel of death, right, passed over the Jewish houses and didn't take their firstborn, but just went to the Egyptian firstborn and took all of their, whether it's livestock or whether it was human firstborn. So there are three interesting parts to this story which we all know well, and if you think about it, you can kind of picture it in your head. It's that gray fog that sort of passes over in the movie. Right? We have the image. So the first thing, if we're going to work backward, is that God tells them to put the blood on the doorposts, the lamb's blood on the doorpost, so that the angel can pasach over the houses. That's what it tells us. And it actually tells us in the verse the word Pesach, which is of course Hebrew for Passover. It uses that word twice. The first time it says that that lamb will be the Pesach offering. And of course in our Eitz Chaim Chumashim, and you're welcome to take a look if you don't trust me, I'm in Exodus chapter 12, which page 383. Page 383, beginning Exodus 12:12. And it actually says that this will be a Pesach offering for us. And our translation tells us that it will be the Paschal offering. I said, thank you very much for translating Pesach as Paschal. We don't actually understand that any better. It's like translating tefillin as phylacteries and expecting that now everyone understands what tefillin are. Right? So we have, of course, here that this Pesach Paschal, fine, it means very little to us. It was the Paschal offering. But later on in the verse, the Torah actually uses the word Pesach as a verb. It says ufasachti. It says that when we put the blood on the doorposts of the Jewish houses, then this angel of death will pasach, will something over the houses. And our rabbis have a debate as to what this actually means. Nachmanides thinks by and large, based on Midrashim, based on the uses of the word elsewhere in the Torah, that the word Pasach actually means have compassion. Right? Doesn't mean Passover. It means have compassion. Or it might mean protect. And so what we translate as Passover really is the holiday of our protection, or the holiday in which God had compassion upon our houses. So we painted this blood on the doorposts, and God knew to protect those homes, or God knew to have compassion on those homes, and not send the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, to destroy the firstborn in those houses. Rashi gives a little different take on it, though. Rashi comes to teach that that verb pasach actually comes to mean to skip over, right? Like a kangaroo that actually jumps over from one house to the next. And so when we put that blood on the doorposts, God knew which homes to literally skip over. So maybe rather than Passover, we can call it skip over this year. Hey, let me know how that goes for you. Right? It's the holiday of skipping over, in which God skipped over the Jewish homes. So that's the first unique thing about our Torah portion, this idea of what exactly happened to the Jewish homes because we painted the blood on the doorposts. Right? Was God having compassion on us? Was God protecting us? Or was God passing over, or more literally skipping over, jumping over the Jewish homes? Another interesting question to ask is, God is God. God knew which homes were Jewish and which homes weren't Jewish. Did God really need a sign to know? Right? God doesn't need us to tell God which homes were the Jewish ones. So if that's the case, if God knew that Chaim Yankel was living here and he wasn't living here, why did we need to paint the blood on the doorposts? If God knew, why did we have to paint that blood on the doorposts? So that's some of the interesting questions that we ask about this intermediate story that happens between the 9th and the 10th plagues. We put the blood on the doorposts, and God will pass over these homes. The next question comes to be, and if we're going backward in our verses, we know that the Torah says, that God says to the Jewish people, you should take lambs. Right? Why did God say to take lambs and use lamb's blood? It seems from our tradition that lambs, and more specifically rams, were among the Egyptian pantheon. So when God said to our ancestors to take those lambs and slaughter them, God was essentially telling the Israelites to spit in the face of their former masters. Here, Egyptians, you think these lambs are gods? Let me show you what we're going to do to your gods. And we slaughtered the lambs. We slaughtered them. Now, if that wasn't a message to the Egyptians, I don't know what is. There are other commentators who come to discuss it wasn't just the Egyptians who accepted the lambs as gods, but actually the Israelites living in Egyptian culture for so long had adopted the lambs as gods themselves. So God was saying to the Israelites, you slaughter that lamb. You slaughter that idea that there might be other gods than me. And in that way, God said to use the lamb's blood. Now, if we back up even further, there's an even more intriguing question. God says in our Torah portion this morning, Parashat Bo, God says to the Israelites, you should take a lamb on the 10th day of the Hebrew month of what we call now Nisan, and keep it in your home until the night of the 14th, in which you'll slaughter it then. Why would God make our ancestors keep lambs in their home for 4 days? It's a strange question. Why? They could have just taken it, slaughtered it, painted the blood on the doorpost, we would have been good to go. But that's not what God said. God said, take a lamb on the 10th day and keep it for 4 days. Why? Now, my wife Rebecca has an interesting theory as she and I were discussing the Parsha. She believes that God was preparing us to accept the mitzvot. And in accepting the commandments, those of us who perform the mitzvot, the commandments, we know you just can't do them. You have to get ready. Right? You have to prepare. If you're going to keep kosher, it takes time to prepare. You're going to celebrate Shabbat. It takes time to prepare. You're going to put a mezuzah up on your doorpost. You have to go to the store. You have to get the mezuzah. You have to get the cloth, the kosher scroll. You have to prepare for it. In order to fulfill mitzvot, you need to prepare. So Rebecca, my wife, teaches that maybe we needed to practice that preparation. So God said, put the lamb in your house on the 10th day, keep it over to the night of the 14th, and then slaughter it. I wonder what you think. Why would God tell us to keep the lamb in our house for 4 days? Maybe you'll tell me at lunch. So here we have this interesting, strange, intriguing story that happens in between the 9th and the 10th plagues. This story of the Pesach, of the Passover. This story of which God skipped over or protected or had compassion upon the Jewish homes because they painted their doorposts in blood. And it leads us to more questions. Right? If God needed to skip over the Jewish homes, what does that tell us about the Jewish homes within the Egyptian homes? Right? They were living together. They were intermingled one with the other. Despite our status as slaves, we were intermingled with the Egyptians. If God needed to tell us to slaughter the lambs as a sign for the Egyptians that we're killing their God, but also as a sign to the Jewish people that we're killing this Egyptian God because it's not a God, it's just a lamb, then that's further indication that we had not only intermingled with the Egyptians in our homes, in our neighborhoods, but we had taken Egyptian culture into our own. We had become fully assimilated with the Egyptian people. And of course, what does God tell us to do with that blood? He tells us to mark it on the doorposts. So that in this way, whenever we are coming and we are going, we knew exactly who we were. We knew that we were different from the Egyptians. Despite our assimilation, despite our integration, we knew that we were different. And we began to take that idea into our souls and into our hearts and figure out what exactly it means. Now, of course, later on in our Torah, it'll command us very specifically, you shall affix mezuzot to your doorposts. And that harkens back to, of course, the blood on the doorposts in Egypt. And when we look upon that mezuzah, we're supposed to be reminded that we are different. We are separate. We are unique. Now, of course, in American culture, we have been very much integrated and assimilated. We know that it's not the same throughout the rest of the world. But here in America, we've fully become part of American culture, and in so many ways, it's a good thing, it's a blessing. And in becoming part of American culture, so many of us liberal Jews have taken upon the mitzvah of tikkun olam, of repairing the world as a central part of our identity, a central part of who we are. We're out to make this world a better place. But I ask us, in our efforts to make this world a better place, truly a mitzvah from God, are we forgetting the message that God gave to us thousands of years ago in telling us to put that blood on the doorposts, in telling us to put the mezuzah on our doorposts? That we have to work as hard as we do to save the world in strengthening the Jewish people, in being proud of our uniqueness, in being proud of our separateness, in being proud of our distinction. It's a mitzvah to make this world a better place. It's also a mitzvah to strengthen the Jewish people, to protect the Jewish people. It's a mitzvah to put that mezuzah up on the doorposts and to remind ourselves when we go in and when we come out that we're not just a Jew in the home, but we're a Jew in the street. That what we do represents the Jewish people. We have a unique and special relationship with God that needs tending to, that needs nurturing. So this Shabbat of Parashat Bo, and then this coming week, let us focus our energies on strengthening the Jewish people just as much as on making this world a better place for everyone. This Shabbat of Parashat Bo, let us recognize that our tzedakah that we give to non-Jewish institutions, the hospitals, the universities, those are good things. But let us not forget the donations, the tzedakah to give to Jewish institutions as well, to Federation, to the federated agencies, and of course to our congregation. In this Shabbat of Parashat Bo, may we work just as hard in strengthening the Jewish people, in developing our own unique identity as Jews, as we do in making this world a better place. And in this way, we, like our ancestors, will truly begin to celebrate the freedom to live as Jews. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. And we say together, Amen.